Welcome to the REI Hacker Podcast, where we unlock the secrets of real estate success. Join us as we dive into the journeys of top investors, mentors, and industry experts. And now, let's hand it off to our host, Benson Juarez.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Really excited for my next guest. His name is Dion McNeely. He is the creator of the Binder strategy. It's a tenant-driven system where renters actually ask for their own rent to increase. It's a concept that made him the keynote speaker at BPCon in 2025 in Las Vegas. He's also known as the lazy investor. Dion retired in 2022 with a small but powerful portfolio of just 18 units across 8 properties. Today, he earns over $240,000 a year from his rentals. He self-manages the entire portfolio in under 2 hours a month and travels the world chasing warm weather. Great scuba, and he's currently calling Thailand home until mid-February. Dion invests exclusively in Washington State, and he shares his straightforward approach on his YouTube channel, Dion Talk Financial Freedom. Dion, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the invitation. I enjoy doing this and trying to help other people reach financial freedom. And I really appreciate your flexibility. Most times I do an interview, people want to do it around noon, which is 3 a.m. where I'm at. So you were a little bit more flexible and I didn't have to get up in the middle of the night.
Happy to do it. Well, I appreciate you being on as well. And we were introduced through a friend of ours. And we have a similar path here. Some of the things that you talk about, or that I've read about you, is that you've got kind of a conservative approach to real estate investing. It's more of a long game. But one of the things that made you, fairly popular is this binder strategy. Can you break down the nuts and bolts of that strategy? One, how did you name it? But more specifically, how do you frame these conversations with a tenant so that they understand they're part of like a mutually beneficial system rather than just being taken advantage of and asked to be paying more?
So I usually get asked a series of questions almost in the same order anytime someone meets me and we talk about investing or financial freedom. And the first one is we talk about the binder and they're like, what do you mean your tenants raise the rent? So I'm going to cover that in detail. And then they find out how much I make with such a small portfolio. And they ask, well, how do you get so much cash flow? So that's usually kind of the follow-up. And I'll go through a couple of reasons why you can get so much cash flow from a small portfolio. But the binder strategy came out because me calling myself the lazy landlord is because my family all runs tree services. I got 2 brothers with tree services. My dad had a tree service. I joined the Marine Corps because that was easier work than working in tree services. And I was raising 3 kids as a single parent. Right? In 2008, I got laid off from law enforcement. So I got out of the Marines, became a cop, and then got laid off from law enforcement. And I started teaching at a CDL school, making $17 an hour. So my starting position was really low wage, single parent with 3 kids. I found out about $89,000 in bad debt in my name I didn't know existed until the divorce. And working full-time raising 3 kids didn't give me a lot of time to invest. So the BRRRR method, buy, rehab, rent out, refinance, repeat, sounds sexy. I didn't have the time or skills to do that. I didn't have the ability to flip or negotiate with contractors. So I ended up having to buy properties, all of my properties, from the MLS, conventional lending, nothing creative. I tell people often that real estate is a get-rich-quick scheme as long as you understand 10 years is quick. So I didn't make a 2 or 3 year plan of my skills getting me to financial freedom. I thought if I can buy 1 rental every couple of years, in 10 years I'd have 5. And my goal wasn't even financial freedom when I started. It was just when I get so old I can't work, I didn't want to become a burden to my kids. Like there's a lot of people my age who are taking care of their parents. I didn't want my kids to get to my age and have to do that. And I thought 5 rentals would do that. But buying on the MLS is fairly challenging. People don't take great cash flowing deals and put it on the MLS and hope that somebody shows up first. They take a deal that they've owned for a while. They're tired landlords. Their tenants aren't getting taken care of. They haven't been doing maintenance. It's not profitable, right? Expenses have gone up. They haven't raised the rent. It's the most common mistake landlords do is they just don't raise the rent, because I've heard this sentence so many times. I've heard the owner say, I don't want to raise the rent and lose a good tenant. So instead, they didn't raise the rent and they lost a good asset. So I'm buying properties off the MLS, just directly from the MLS, that aren't cash flowing at current rents. And so what the binder strategy is, and I don't do this right away because I'm buying properties with tenants in place. I actually prefer to buy already occupied properties. So unless I'm going to move in, I want an empty unit. I didn't get to vet those tenants, right? I didn't get to look at their credit scores. I didn't get to verify their work history. I'm just kind of taking the risk that people say. And it could go bad. I could go through an eviction. So I had to have reserves for that. But I wait about 2 months because I want to vet the tenants. And those 2 months is when I determine, do they pay their rent on time? Do they call me for silly things? Do I get noise complaints? Like all the things we want to screen for, I get to just do it in real time for 2 months. But at the 2 month point, what I've done, and the reason it's called the binder strategy is because I'm as simple as they come. Like my friends call me that crayon eating Marine guy that just everything has to be really basic. But I take a 3-ring binder. That's why it's called the binder. Now, this can be done through email. It can be done through text. My friend Matt, the lumberjack landlord, does this through text or email. When I work with Section 8, I'll do it through email. But with the tenants, I'll take a 3-ring binder. The cover of the binder is a picture of my property, right, from Zillow or Redfin. And on there, it shows probably the sales price that I paid for it because it's been a couple of months. It shows the tenants that we're talking about the property so they know right off the bat what I'm there. I'm not there to evict them. I'm not there to kick them out. I usually set them at ease, say that's not my goal. I don't want you to move out. I tell the tenant that the rent you're paying made sense to the previous owner, but this is what the current price, the Zestimate or Redfin's estimate, the Zillow thing is. My taxes and insurance are based on this new amount. And the tenants don't care about my expenses. That's not why I'm telling them. What I'm showing is this is transparent information. You could just open up your computer, type in Zillow, look at your address. All this information that I'm going to show you in this binder is available for you too. So there's no secret that's going on here. I'm just trying to be transparent. Open up the binder. The first page is a map of the area with the little pinpoints on Zillow or Realtor or whatever is used in your area of all of the places that are for rent that are the same. So if it's a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, if it has a garage, if it has a fenced yard or anything that I can do, all of the rentals that are as similar as possible are pinpointed on there so they could see I'm looking at the area you live in, because tenants think in quality of life. How far is the school? How far is my work? Where's all of the things in the area that I use? So I want to show them that I'm looking at the same area. I'm not comparing, an hour out from the major city to in the major city. I'm just whatever region we're in. After that will be a printout of what Section 8 will pay. And then I highlight, and you can just go to fair market rents. The HUD puts out by October every year, they put out next year's what they're willing to pay for a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or 4-bedroom in your market. And some places it's broken down by zip code, depending on your population. Some places it's just by county. And I show, if you move out, this is what the government would pay for me to rent to a Section 8 housing voucher tenant. And then I flip the page, and then some of my properties are close to Joint Base Lewis McChord, a large military base on the West Coast. Some of my properties are close to a college. So I'll include what is called basic allowance for housing, what the military will pay to live off post, or if you're using your GI Bill at a college, this is what you get paid for living expenses. And then after that, it sounds like a lot, but there's only 3 more pages left. I'll print out copies of rentals in the area and what they're renting for. And here are some real numbers on one of my last binder strategies. So the tenant had already been bindered, but in 2022, after the eviction moratorium and the rent freeze of 2020 had gone away, I used the binder strategy on all my tenants. Rent was $1,460 for a 2-bedroom place. Section 8 had gone up so much after 2020 that they would pay $1,987. The BAH was ridiculous. It was like $2,100 or something. And then all of the rentals in the area were $1,900 to $2,100. So they all hovered around that $2,000 point. Now, if I go to my tenants and I just say, hey, we had a pandemic, everything was really bad, all my expenses have gone up, insurance has gone up, property taxes have gone up, I'm going to raise your rent $100. I'd be a jerk. Tenants would flame me on social media, probably move out, right? They would hate their landlord. But I went to the tenants and I said, look, you're paying $1,460. The government would pay $19.87 if you moved out. And this was Pierce County, Washington. So people can look it up if they want to. And here's what other rentals would be if you decided to move out. There's several in the area that are the same size, same fenced yard, washer, dryer, hookups, 2-bedroom. You can move into any of those. They're all between $1,900 and $2,100. And there were some for $2,500, but I didn't want to scare the tenant. And there were low income ones for like $1,700. And I point those out on the map and I say, if you qualify low income, these are available too. But everything similar to this is around $2,000. And here's the magic words, because we're having a conversation. This is not just me setting the rent. I go to the tenant and I say, what do you think is fair? And that sentence, almost every tenant makes a decision and wants to set the rent within 10 minutes. Once in a while, I'll leave the binder for a couple of days, let them do some research. They come back and we have the ongoing conversation. I've never had a tenant say, I want the rent to stay the same or go down. Right? That just because they know the mathematically the best thing for me to do is kick them out. It's what most investors do. They want to buy an empty place, so they had the seller kick them out, or they want to buy it and kick somebody out to rehab the unit, spend $5,000 to $10,000, get it all shiny and new, and then get that new $2,100 area average rent. I'm not about math. I was working full time, raising 3 kids, and I don't want to displace a tenant. Most tenants will go just above splitting the difference. So in this case, both of the tenants, because once you do one side of a duplex, the other side usually picks the same number because they're going to talk anyway. So I share what the first conversation was like. I think this went to one tenant said $1,850, and I said, that's great. That'd be fair for me. But how about we go to $1,700 next year? We'll talk about another increase. So I get over a $250 increase in rent. I'm not called a jerk. I'm not flamed on the internet. The tenant chose the number. And the most important aspect to me isn't that I got a nice increase without having to do a rehab, without having to take my time away from work or my kids at the time to manage a contractor or go put in flooring myself. But I have a happy tenant. I have a tenant who knows rents in the area have gone up to $2,000. They were getting a really good deal. They're still getting a deal, didn't have to move. And I included them in the conversation, which is something most tenants never experience. And hundreds of people have used this strategy in all different types of markets. Sometimes tenants will ask for a small increase, and you have to have the conversation and say, that does seem fair to you, but look how far you are off from the area average, and then it gets adjusted up a little more. Occasionally, tenants ask for too much, and you recommend it down a little because, yeah, we want to get the most rents we can, but I don't want a $500 or $600 rent increase to tenants that just had their property purchased. $200 or $300 if they're that far below the area average, I'm comfortable with, and the tenants have been comfortable with. And at the time, working single parent, the least amount of tenant turnover was more important to me than the most amount of cash flow.
I just muted myself. I was clearing my throat. That's really impressive. Okay. I like how you include them in almost like the decision-making process, right? And I also like the point where you let them go a little above and then you come down a bit to even give them some more power back. Because it's all, I mean, I guess it's more than subliminal, but they feel it. There's an emotional reaction to this, I bet.
There is. And there's a few nuances. I made a free course. There's no cost for it. It's at diontalk.com. It's called The Binder Strategy. People could take it. It has all, how does it work with Section 8? How does it work with the property manager? How does it work at a distance? So there's the text version, the email version. There's some nuance. Let's say in this case that the tenants picked $1,850 and I said $1,700. We agreed. So she's at $1,700, probably going to be there for a year or two. The tenant has mentally decided in their head, okay, we've settled on $1,700. They're thinking next month, they're starting to budget. Okay, this is a $250 or so increase. Then I say, how about we'll go with $1,700. We'll sign the lease. I've got it with me today. We'll write in the number. But next month stays the same, whatever your current rent is. The month after that stays the same. And then in that third month, giving you time to adjust to your budget, that third month from now, the rent will change. Every time I've had that conversation, tenants are super excited because they feel like they didn't get kicked out. They didn't get this massive increase. They got to be in the conversation, and they got 2 months before they have to make the payment. And what's really happening is
you're getting 14 months,
mine included. you have to give notice before a rent increase.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying, look, I'm meeting my legal obligations to give you this time. I have the conversation and I say, this is when it will kick in, and I let them think whatever they want to think. Happy tenants make a happy landlord. And
Oh yeah.
I've had tenants where a few years later show up with the binder so they know what's going to happen. They've usually done their research, looked up the area averages too, and it's gone really well. I haven't yet. I've had one case where the binder strategy failed for me. It might have failed for other people too. And that's the best outcome. In this one case, I had 2 remote workers who had state jobs, and they said, yeah, rent's gone up around here a lot. This was like their second or third time using the binder strategy with me. And they said, we have remote jobs. We're just going to move to a small town, I think Chehalis, Washington, hours away from everything, where the rent is 50% of what it is in my market. So they moved out. I'd been waiting for these tenants to leave because it was a 2-bedroom with a den. And so I add a closet to a den. Now I have a 3-bedroom. I had like a $1,200 a month increase in rent since they've moved out. I wouldn't have got $1,200 with the binder strategy, but it's rare. So when I have the turnover and I have to have a contractor, figure out what it takes to add a closet, it's this much time in the decade of investing it took to reach financial freedom, instead of that was the case every time and I would have got burnt out like a lot of other people do.
Right. Have you seen that these tenants have a change in how they view the property? Like, for owners, there's pride of ownership. Maybe there's pride of tenantship. Do you think they take better care of the properties after you approach them and you get them involved in the process?
That is a great follow-up question, because that's exactly what happens.
Mm.
And I don't know that it's pride of ownership, but it's just happy tenants.
Yeah.
I had a tenant who, she was very young, right? Early 20s, a single parent. And I was called for everything. Dishwasher made a sound, window squeaks, like everything you could think of was a call. And I educate tenants that it's text or email, unless there's these 3 words. If the conversation is going to include fire, flood, or blood, I take this from Ken McElroy. If that's going to be in the conversation, call me after 911. But everything else should be a text. Use the binder strategy. She was so happy. And we had a short conversation on, hey, this is what you call your landlord for. This is what is an emergency. This is what is an issue. Almost nothing. Once or twice a year, there will be a small issue. But it went from 2 or 3 conversations a month in the beginning to now it's lease renewal, or I think something actually broke. Oh, a towel rack in a bathroom, which needed to be tightened. But that was it. And now like 3 or 4 years.
Wow. So in that case, it wasn't really like ownership or like taking care of the property better. It was just a better relationship with them. They decided to hold up their end of the relationship and just be a better tenant.
Yeah, I think when tenants not only get included in the conversation, but feel educated on what has happened to rents in your area. Because if a smart tenant was listening, thinking, oh, this is how my landlord could raise my rent, this is how a tenant could lower their rent. If your rent is significantly above area average, and you could find Section 8, and you can find basic allowance for housing, BAH, and you can find comps in the area, make a binder. Next conversation with your landlord, say, hey, here's what you're charging. Here's what everything else in the area is. What do you think is fair?
Right.
It would go both ways. Most cases, rents have shot up because prices of Washington State is making me significantly richer, because in 2025, they've passed rent control. It finally kicked in Washington, and so many landlords go, oh, this is terrible. I don't want rent control. I would use the binder strategy, and then every other year I would do a 5% increase, unless we had 2020 or rent control threatened or some black swan event. Then I would use the binder again. So most years I would have no increase and then a 5% increase. From 2013 to 2020, that worked fine. Kept me up with expenses. I wasn't trying to make a ton of money. I was just trying to keep happy tenants, low tenant turnover, and cash flow. Well, now rent control is capped at 7% a year in Washington. And since I can't do a big adjustment, massive adjustment, when there's some event, I'm forced to do 7% a year. But I still use the binder. I still go, here's what the military will pay. Here's what the Section 8 will pay. Here's what the area averages are. You're getting a great deal. I'm allowed to do technically 7% plus inflation. I'm only going to do 7%. So I don't do the what's fair. I just go, here's the 7% increase. So 7% a year versus 5% every other year almost triples my profit. It's making me tens of thousands of dollars more a month now. And we're not even at the, well, while we're recording this, it's not even the end of 2025 yet. Like, that's what's happening with my rents in my area. Because of Section 8 going in, I'm making so much more money. And I still have happy tenants. The binder strategy is educating them to, if there was tenant turnover, if you moved or if I had somebody else come in, this is how big the increase would be. Since you're staying, there is an increase, but it's not as much as you'd be paying if you moved to somewhere else.
Right. How are the appreciation rates in Washington, in the area you're in? Is it pretty normal, or?
I try not to be political on podcasts, but so there's things I do that are technically backwards. It was actually an episode on Bigger Pockets with Dave Myers called Dionisms, things I do backwards. Like, I want my leases to end in the winter. I don't want to invest in a good school district. My tenants set the rent. I want to invest in a blue state. Most landlords want to invest in a red state because they're landlord friendly and evictions are faster and squatter rights are less, or whatever the reasoning is. Washington, based on your question, is the highest appreciating state for the last 20 years because it's a blue state. Now, not to be political, I don't care what side of the fence people are on, but in a blue state, I don't want to invest in a blue county. Right? I don't invest in King County where Seattle is. My brother invests in California, he doesn't invest in LA County. He invests in Kern County. I invest in Pierce and Thurston counties in Washington. Red county in a blue state. So what you get is the legislation that makes it really hard to build. An ADU it's cost prohibitive in most places. Even with the new legislation, it's still not working. Permit processes to connect to sewer is not 20 or 30,000, it's 80,000 to start the process. So building is very limited. So the appreciation is extreme in those states, whereas landlord ease might be better in the more landlord friendly states. The appreciation, which I've never touched. I've actually never done a cash out refinance, never taken out a HELOC, never done a sell. I've never sold for a 1031. I might sell a property in 2026 for the first time. My first and last BRRRR I've ever did, which I did after I retired. I've been retired for 3 years now. I've never touched the equity, but my kids will inherit. Instead of a parent that they have to take care of, my kids are going to inherit millions each, which is that's my use for appreciation more so than to grow my portfolio. It's to generational wealth as an accidental byproduct of me reaching financial freedom.
Right. That was going to be my follow-up question is you got all this equity and one of your Dionisms is to not tap into it, which goes against every other real estate investor guru out there who's telling you, well, except for Michael Zuber, but is telling you to go and tap into that so you can use leverage to buy more properties. And with leverage, you can scale up and you can get more cash flow. Yes, you've got more debt, but you can cover all that with the rents, and that's how you grow, right? That's how you get to 100 doors. And everything you believe is against that.
Yeah. So I'm an avid listener of Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time. Coach Carson, the Small and Mighty Investor. I say my portfolio was a combination of theirs. I didn't want the biggest portfolio or bragging rights on door count. What I wanted was the right amount of cash flow from the least amount of units. So one thing that did is I wanted a high cost of living area. Another reason to be in an expensive state is if you're getting a 10% return, 10% on a $400,000 duplex on your down payment is more than 10% on an $80,000 duplex in Gary, Indiana, right? Like you're just going to have fewer properties with more cash flow invested in fewer properties. So fewer roofs, fewer tenants, toilets, and termites to deal with, more cash flow. There's two options when it comes to growing your portfolio. And now I'm a fan of leverage. The last thing I want to do is have a paid off property. That would be the worst thing for my portfolio. Out of my 8, 2 are paid off. Those are the only 2 at risk because they don't have the bank in first position as leverage, as an asset protection. I'm only getting appreciation and principal pay down and depreciation on what I have invested in those properties. But the ones with mortgages, I'm getting appreciation and depreciation on the bank's money, right? So I love leverage. I in growth mode, I wanted to be around 70%. a loan to value. So if I had $1 million property, I wanted a $700,000 loan or combination of properties. In retirement, I want it 50% or less, a little more stability, a little more safety, but I still want leverage. But when you're growing your portfolio, the two paths are either recycle capital, which is the home equity line of credit. My brother used that strategy, would take out a HELOC, buy a property, fix it up, pay off the HELOC, rinse and repeat till he got to 10 paid off properties and he retired. It's kind of one of my, not mentors, but like motivations. I was like, oh, it's possible. He did it. He's as dumb as I am. And if we can do it, let's do this ourselves. And, or sell for 1031, like Michael Zuber did. He got in 2008, just before that, he sold 8 properties and went to 80 units. Like he knew he was at the peak of the housing.
Right.
Single family houses were having an issue. They were unaffordable, the affordability index, the adjustable rates, the bad loans. He's smarter than I am. So he sold everything, went into commercial. And now he has 180, mostly residential again. So he follows the market. He's really smart. I'm not smart. I know it. I had to be simple. I had to be consistent. And so instead of recycling capital, I recycled cash flow. So that's the other path. And so starting out, my first thing is I had a really bad debt to income ratio, right? $89,000 in debt I didn't know I had, $17 an hour in income, 3 kids to raise. Like I was not in a good position. The lender actually told me there's no way you can buy a rental, right? She just casually dropped this sentence and it changed my life. She just said, unless you had something like rental income on your tax returns. And I was like, what do you mean? And I had her explain to me she gave me a little Dion talk, like 10 minutes of educating. So I took my kids and we moved out of my house and into an apartment. We had a house that I kept through the divorce on a lake, right? Plenty of room. Kids loved it. People think, oh, my kids would never do that. We moved into an apartment. My kids were excited. My son was a teenager. He said, wait, you want to move to the apartments where all the girls live? So he was on board. And my daughters wanted to be the new girl. There was some TV show on in the early, 2010s, 2011. The new girl was on, and they were like, we get to go to a new place and be the new girl. So they were excited. So we moved into an apartment and rented out the house. 2 years later, with very frugal living, right? I was driving a 19-year-old and a 17-year-old, a Jeep Cherokee and a Jeep Wrangler. They were so old. I had to have 2 so I could keep one running to get me to work. Never ate out, no vacations. Just trying to think of all the frugal things, no streaming services. My poor kids grew up with the Friends DVD set. So we were all sarcastic, but they just didn't stream a lot outside of that. So really frugal. Every penny of cash flow that came in was recycled. At the 2-year point, I bought a duplex, moved into one side, rented out the other. It's basically like living in an apartment, except you get to screen the tenant. And now we had our own fenced yard again. So it was kind of a step up for me from the apartment. It was another 2 years till we bought the next one. So it's really slow. I was 4 years in. I did 2 deals. There's so many people that are like, oh, I did 10 deals in 1 year. And I'm like, yeah, but
Right.
Your margins are this thin. One hiccup, one mistake, no reserves. Your rents and your mortgages are just pushing each other because you've either pulled money out. People say they use their equity. I redefine it as you have the ability to add debt to an existing asset, because it's not your money. It's just you're putting debt on an asset. That's the way I look at it. And so I needed this stability of big gaps between my mortgage payment and what my rents were. The binder strategy helps with that. Not taking out equity helps with that. And then after the 4th year where I had the house rented out, the first year I lost money because I made every stupid mistake you could think of. Like I wasn't educated. I didn't find Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time. I didn't find Coach Carson. I hadn't found Bigger Pockets yet. I thought, I'm not a real landlord because I moved from my house into an apartment, right? I didn't buy a property to be a landlord. What I did was I thought, I can't trust a stranger. I'll rent to a friend. And if I'm renting to a friend, I don't want to contract between buddies, so I don't need a lease, right? Like I line up the mistakes, I made them all. Rent became late. And I thought, well, he's a single parent like me. Life can be rough. Late became never. And I thought, oh, he's not paying the rent now. So I went to talk to him. I went to the house to talk to him. He didn't live there. He had moved out, rented the house to someone else with a lease. So he was doing better landlord than I was. And the place was trashed. Like he had built half a wall and broke some other things. And so in the very first year, I had my almost only eviction. I haven't had an eviction, but I had to do cash for keys to get the tenant out. Spent money. I lost like $6,000 that first year. Tried to quit. Thought, I can't do this. There's no way I could be a landlord. I'm not smart enough. Luckily, because 2008, the crash had happened, and I owed more on the house, like 2011 or so. I owed more on the money, more money on the house than it was worth. I owed 138,000. I couldn't sell it for 100,000. So even subject to wasn't working. No one would take the house, and I was stuck with it. So it was either file bankruptcy, give up the house, which at the time I wasn't sure if I was going to go back to law enforcement or not, and that would have been a career killer. So bankruptcy wasn't really an option. I had to figure out the debt I didn't know about when I found out about it, and I had to keep the house. That's when I thought, okay, it's not that landlording is the problem. I'm the problem. I'm going to jump into investing and just no education whatsoever. Like it took 13 weeks to become a Marine. It took 6 months to become a police officer. Like it would take years to get a degree. So I thought, let me educate myself. And I found Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Bigger Pockets, later One Rental at a Time. And I just started becoming a sponge. I took in all of the podcasts like this. Then I weeded through the Get Rich Quick and the flipping and the wholesaling and all the things that would take skills I don't have or time I didn't have. And the slow and steady. How do I manage properties? How do I build systems? How does lending work? How do you screen tenants? How do you find tenants? How do you get a lease? How do you make your lease strong? All of the things, the little tiny things that come together where confidence comes from competence. When I was competent at screening, I was confident to rent again. When I was competent at finding and building a lease, then I had the confidence to use the lease. Like all these skills that I built. And I got, in the beginning, it felt like it took 20 hours a week to manage my one tenant. Like that's how bad it was. Once I got my systems in place, now it's 18 units. I live in one. I travel most of like half the year, so I'm traveling. But I have 17 tenants. It takes me 2 hours a month to manage my portfolio. And that's on a bad month. Like most months, it's 30 minutes. I basically go through, check rent rolls, maybe answer a text or two. But on a turnover, if I have a tenant move out, and that's probably going to take 5 or 6 hours that month. But it averages out the year to about 2 hours a month. So much better than those first couple of years, because this really is a systems type of investing. Like the environment for real estate is, my favorite sentence when it comes to this was, treat your properties like you have 100 and your tenants like you only have 1. So if your tenants feel like they're a priority, they tend to stay. But if you have 100 properties, I'm not the one going to fix a fence. I'm not the one going to swap out a light, right? If I had 100 properties, I'd be hiring somebody. So at 17, I have a list of handymen that I keep happy. I hire for small jobs and tip well so that they're willing to answer the phone on the hard jobs or the big jobs. And that lets me I'm in Thailand now for 3 months. Finally settled into the town. I think I'm going to stay in for a couple of months. I bounced around a bit. When I come back in February for the One Rental at a Time event in Vegas, after that, I might come back to Thailand. I might go to Scotland for a few months. Depends on how I'm going to chase the good weather and the good scuba. And eventually, around the end of summer or fall, I'll be back in Washington. It's my favorite time there. And I can manage from anywhere. I don't have a property manager. But it took a solid 5 years to get those systems in place and to get to where I could do this. Like, it's not like the systems just happened overnight. It took a long time to build the skill and then to put the systems in place. So it's simple. It's not easy.
Right. But over these years, you've developed such an amazing system and you've developed all these skills, and now you're not using them as much when you could actually devote those same resources to growing the portfolio even more. But you stopped at 18, right? 18 properties. You said, I'm good. And now you got a problem where you have all this money, you got to go spend it, right? So you're looking for additional, maybe, I don't know, hobbies, more traveling. I got to spend this cash because I'm not going to invest it. It seems a little contradictory, but is it just the lifestyle that you like?
So here's a couple of things, and I'll try not to say the word too many times to where it loses all meaning, but I call these superpowers. The first one is being lazy. And people laugh. They're like, no, you were working full time, raising 3 kids and investing in real estate. Right. My father used to always say, if you want to find the easiest way to do something, ask a lazy person. They'll tell you. So my systems are designed for the lazy person. It takes text messages, maybe a phone call once in a great rare time now. Emails. I'd switch to email anytime something's important because emails are admissible in court. Sometimes text messages might not be. So the lazy superpower is, how would I do this that will take the least amount of my time? And what's made me really good at it is being a truck driving instructor, learning how people retain information, how to present it in different ways. If I'm doing something in real estate, I look at it through the lens of, if I had to teach somebody how to screen tenants, how would I teach them? Well, that sets up the system, because the highest form of learning is teaching. If I had to teach somebody how to get the best interest rates and the cheapest way to buy down your interest rate and all of those things, how would I do lending? So everything I've done in real estate, I've looked at, how would I teach this to somebody? It makes me better at doing it. The other superpower is knowing what enough is. There are so many people. The real estate investing education timeline goes like this, and I'll line it up with the K through 12. In kindergarten, the investor thinks, how many doors do you have? That's the question you'll get asked. They're brand new. They don't realize that you could be losing money per door. So door count doesn't help you. It doesn't tell you if you're good or not, because the guy with 500 doors sounds better than the guy with 50, unless they're losing money. So then when they go to like middle school, they go, how much money do you make per door? Which sounds good. Now you know if they're positive or negative based on their door count. But what's their yield? If they spent $1 billion, if they invest $1 billion to make $100 a month, that's not a good return. If they have a VA loan with zero in it and they're making $100 a month, that could be a good return. So when they go to high school, now they learn what yield is. What was the cost to acquire the property? Divide your annual profit by that. So annual profit divided by cost to acquire gives you a percentage, like a 10% cash on cash return, or 7% cash on cash return. And that tells you if it was a good deal or not. When you graduate high school, it's how well does that property meet your criteria? Is it in a safe neighborhood? Does it keep your tenant turnover low? Does it take a lot of your time or a little of your time? Does your tenant, like all of those things that make a rental good, that are, math's part of it, but it's like 1 out of 19 things. Is the parking good? Is the neighborhood safe? Does it have a pet-friendly fenced yard? Is there a washer dryer hookup? Like all the things I'm also going to check with the math. So that's the education of the real estate investing education timeline. And so when somebody asks a question, I can usually tell what they know about investing. If they ask how many doors, they're new. If they ask what's your yield, they're really close to understanding that that's part of a good rental. And because of my time in the Marine Corps, my memory will do this to me occasionally. Please remind me of the question we were at. I've got some memory issues that kick in every now and then.
Oh, I asked you, you had developed all these resources, the skills, the ability to collect these properties, and it's almost like an engine you could just repeat. But then you chose to stop at 18 and just kind of go travel. But now you got all this extra income that you have to go spend. And so you're figuring out ways of getting creative, of spending $21,000 a month. But you could be investing that money as well.
Well, so thank you for that. And so it's a balance.
Mm-hmm.
My cost of living, and when I'm in the US, is around $4,000 a month, right? I live in one of my units of a duplex, and people say, why would you retire in a duplex? Well, first, it's on the water in the Puget Sound. I scuba. I like to walk down with a bucket and a rake and grab crab to cook crab for dinner anytime I want. Like, there's a reason I want to live on the water, but I wanted a duplex because I'm in Thailand right now for 3 months. And when I come back, I don't have a return flight yet. My return flight is to Vegas. I live in Washington. I don't know when I'm going to go back to Washington, but there's a tenant on my property. I know about any noises. I'll know about any break-ins. I'll know about any water leaks. I'll know about any water freezes. Amazon package got delivered 2 days after I left in the beginning of November. Tenant grabbed it, and I'll get it in next time I'm in Washington. So it was part of retiring. But the balance, when I'm traveling, maybe Scotland will cost more. I'll probably spend $12,000 a month there or so. But in Thailand, I struggle to spend $4,000 a month. Mm-hmm. Like if I went and stayed in Bangkok or Chiang Mai or one of the higher cost of living ones, I could probably get there. But I'm in what's called Hua Hin right now, the town I'm in. Really nice, 4 or 5 star places are $40 or $50 a night. 2 tomahawk steaks with drinks and appetizers and everything is about $12 total, like with tip and everything. So it's a bit harder to hit that here. So I have somewhere between, I would say, $10,000 to $17,000 a month that just keeps hitting my account. Like even while traveling, there's more money in my account than when I left. So my goal is not to grow the portfolio, but it will grow. In 2026, I'm probably going to buy another property because I want to put the money somewhere. I've been investing for over 10 years. I have still not paid 1 penny in rental income tax because I have levered appreciation, levered depreciation, right? I have all the tax benefits of real estate. So buying another one will push the tax bill further down the road because I'll start a new depreciation schedule on the income. My kids will inherit more. It's not the goal. The systems are so good. I won't notice the difference between the 17 rented out units or 20 rented out units.
Right.
So I don't mind adding more properties, but it's not really the goal. It's just I got to put the money somewhere, and it's the asset class that I've mastered.
Right.
Like a lot of people talk about diversifying, and they'll say, Kevin O'Leary says, no more than 20% in an asset class, no more than 5% in an asset. I'm 100% in real estate. Like I emptied out my retirement accounts in 2020 to put the down payment on a triplex. I have no stocks. I didn't own any stocks until last year when Tesla went on sale. I put 1% of my net worth into Tesla. Just it's doubled in value since then. I'm going to sell it once it hits capital gains. 1 year of ownership. I won't own any more stocks. My 2 ways of diversifying are in real estate, so I can sleep like a baby. This is my sleep well account, a Swan account. Sleep well at night. The first one is my properties are at least 10 miles apart. In the very beginning, this was really important. In the later, I bought one that was 7 miles from the other one. But that way I've got duplexes or triplexes or 1 fourplex spread out close to a base, a port, a college, a hospital, Boeing or Amazon or some big company or a big population, right? So if there is a base closure or a port strike or something or prolonged government shutdown, 1 or 2 of my units are impacted, not all 17. So I don't want to own a 10 unit that pulls tenants from all one area. I want to own duplexes spread out. So that's my first form of diversification. The second one, to protect my retirement, is I have 3 types of tenants. I want about 1/3 military, 1/3 Section 8, 1/3 working or retired. And it's not perfect. I never have exactly 1/3, but I have a goal to maintain that. And so that way if literally the government shut down long enough, my entire portfolio is not impacted. If there's a recession, my entire portfolio is not impacted because recessions cause rents to go up, right? That it doesn't. 2008, who made out the best? Long-term buy and hold investors who had fixed rate debt, because millions of people went through foreclosures. What happened to them? They became renters. What happened to rents in 2009, 10, and 11 on Class C properties? It went up. Luxury rents came down. So I don't buy Class A properties. I want Class C neighborhoods where the demand goes up in bad times. So I'm diversified that way. And before someone says in the comments on your video, yes, it's illegal to discriminate. So I don't put an ad out that says military only or Section 8 only or whatever, or no military or no Section 8. But when I have a listing come available, if I go on base and I list with the housing authority on the military installation closest to me, what tenant am I most likely to get to apply? If I call the housing authority and I say, hi, I have a unit coming available next Tuesday. Here's a link. Can you share this with your clients? Who's going to be the first few tenants to apply? I can control where I advertise, even though I advertise the same, and I'll take whichever tenant comes along that's qualified first. And that keeps me that close to 1/3 ratio so that I have confidence in I'm not over levered. I have all fixed rate debt. I don't do any adjustable rate, no balloon payments. These are all conventional loans. I paid 1 property off on accident, and that cost me $1 million. So I won't be doing that again. But the diversified tenant types, properties spread out, not all in one market. I mean, if it gets to the point where I'm struggling, the world has much more bigger problems than me having financial wins to worry about. So I'm comfortable in my ability. I walked away from $2 million in golden handcuffs. At that CDL school that I worked at, I had been demoted all the way down to president of the company. I grew up from 1 location with 6 staff to 5 locations in different states with 60 staff. And they had basically $2 million golden handcuffs. As long as I stayed, this is what I could get if there was a sale. I retired and walked away from it. And I don't care, because $2 million means nothing. And it's so weird to say that. To go from $17 an hour with 3 kids as a single parent to $2 million wouldn't change my life at all. I wouldn't feel the difference. And it's a quote from a basketball player. When you don't have enough, money is the only thing. But once you have enough, it's just a thing. And financial freedom, for me, with my lifestyle, the way I travel and everything, more financial freedom doesn't mean more freedom. It would just mean more money I'd have to invest, more work for me, which I don't need.
Right. So, early on, you get some pretty major setbacks in both your personal and professional life, your life and your career. And, it affected you probably emotionally. And, you had to figure out ways of overcoming that. Do you think if you hadn't had those situations happen to you, and maybe you would, had achieved a stable financial life earlier, when you're younger, when those hard times were happening for you, do you think that you ever would have gotten to this point? Do you think you would have ever developed the discipline that was required to create this path that you ultimately followed?
That's a great question. Absolutely not. It's the trap called success. And if somebody's
Mhm.
watching right now and they don't have major hardships in their life, make the decision before you have the hardships. I joined the Marine Corps, thought I'll do 20 years, get out, do 20 years in law enforcement, and retire with 2 pensions. So I'd be in my 60s and finally retire with Social Security and 2 pensions. The Marine Corps downsized after Desert Storm. So I come back from a combat zone and they're like, hey, we're shrinking. And so my career path got changed. And then I thought, okay, I'll do law enforcement to the pension. And then the recession hit in 2008. Municipalities weren't being able to collect taxes. So it's like they say, during a recession, there's no more crime, so we don't need cops anymore. And I got laid off with a bunch of other qualified officers, and that pension went away. Had I not gotten laid off, or had I gone back to work in law enforcement, I'd still be working. I wouldn't own a rental.
Mhm.
I would be working towards a pension. But since my pension had been taken away 2 times, since marriages pluralized hadn't worked out so great, and the debt showed up, I thought at 40, like I had made it to 40 pretty much without ever having $1,000 in the bank. I thought I need to create my own pension. And that's when I was like, okay, how would I do this? Well, it would take 10 years. I would want at least 5 rentals. And I didn't know how, because this thing called the income snowball happens after about the 5-year mark. The first 4 years were really slow, right? 2 years to buy one property, 2 years to buy another. But then I had the cash flow from 2 duplexes in a single family house. My job started to pay more. I started getting those demotions and pay increases. It was a year and a half to the next one. Instead of 2 years, saving the down payment was sooner. And then I made that mistake of paying off a house. And then the next one was I bought my first fourplex, my second house hack. So 7 years in, I moved into a fourplex, rented out the first unit I was in. Like at the 7-year mark, the cash flow started being more than I was making at my job. Didn't retire yet. I worked for 2 more years because I was testing my portfolio. I didn't touch any money from work. Every penny from my W-2 went into the account for investing. I lived off rental income to like test that I could, and saved more and more of that rental income as it grew. And then in 2022, I finally thought, so, and it's weird. I looked at it the same way. If I was really successful, I never would have invested. But since I invested, my cash flow, when I retired, it was like 17,000 a month, and I live on 4. So it was 4 times what I needed. It's gone up to over 21,000 a month now. Thank you, Rent Control. It's really nice. I was listening to Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time, and he had a really good job. He loved his job. He would have worked more years, and something happened where he had a bad day at work. He went into work at 8 in the morning. 8:45, he was on his way home calling his wife, Olivia, saying, hey, and I'm so old, we do our phones like this if you're watching on video. He was calling his wife saying, hey, I don't work anymore. I'm coming home. I'm retired. So he's going to live. Now, Zuber is a friend of mine, and so I have absolute respect for him, but he's going to spend the rest of his life with a bad taste in his mouth of the last day at his job. I was at work July 5th, 2022. I was financially free for a few years, and I was solving a problem that our company had. We had an issue with a government agency that was going to cost the company millions. I had, for 4 months, I prepped with attorneys. I was studying NLP to get my communication skills better. I was working on this, and we had a Zoom meeting with all our management staff and the agency that was trying to attack our company. A 2-hour meeting, I flipped the conversation, and I got the agency on our side and fighting for the company now instead of fighting against the company. So I took a problem that was going to cost us millions to one that made the company millions. At the end of the meeting, my brain said, this is the best day you're going to have at work. I asked the owners to stay on the Zoom meeting As everyone else left, the state agency left, our other managers left, and it was just me and the two owners of the company. And I said, hey, I'm retiring. I'll get to spend the rest of my life thinking, I had a great job. I loved it. I had a victory, the best day I was ever going to have. And that was enough. And so I think the trap that is success for me was almost solved by listening to content like Zubers. Or there's this investor, Joe Kuhn, who invests, Kuhn, who invests in stocks. I don't invest in stocks, but his retirement content made me think, what would life be like if I didn't have an alarm clock, a schedule, the stress of clients or customers or compliance, and I just had all the time freedom that I wanted. It's really sad when I hear people say, I don't want to retire because I don't know what I would do with my time. I'd finally, it took 8 years with no vacations, but I started taking some vacations. I'd gone to Colombia and Thailand and Florida, which I call the Australia of the US, and gone scuba diving everywhere. And I was thinking, wow, if I had all my time, I would travel where I like the weather. I would travel where I like the food. I would travel where the people like Americans. Like, I would travel to all these places. I've been retired now 3 years. Every day I've wondered how I had time to work. I've never wondered what I would do with my time. I think, wow, how did I ever fit 40 hours a week, let alone the 60 I was working, into this schedule where every day is packed full of stuff to do? Because there's this whole wide world out here that people just ignore because this is what makes me sad. How sad is someone's life if their purpose is something they have to be paid to do? Like, I didn't want to be that.
And that's the majority of our country. It really is. Maybe most of the world as well, at least the first world. So it is sad, but that's the way the world turns, really. Man, so much good content. You're definitely an inspiration. I'm rethinking a lot of my investing decisions just sitting here, and probably the others are who are listening. And I know you share a lot of this content on your YouTube channel. Where can people go to follow you, to learn more about what you're working on? I'm not sure if all the content is just around, the binder strategy. Maybe it's about your travels and what you're working on. Where can they follow you?
So I try to put out content on financial freedom. The binder strategy is part of that. Mm-hmm. But it's, I think the average person can reach financial freedom and make work completely optional in 10 years or less, even if you're not starting from the best position. It's a 10-year journey. A lot of people are going to say, how can I do it faster? Nope. The faster you try to do it, the more risk you're going to make. I made a free course on the binder at diontalk.com. You can reach out to me on there too. If you're in the course, I communicate in there often. I have a book on Amazon called Financial Freedom for the Lazy Person. And on YouTube, it's Dion Talk Financial Freedom. Every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Pacific, even when I'm traveling, I do a live stream that lasts as long as the questions do, usually a couple of hours. And so I'll do an intro for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and then it's 2 hours of answering investing or retirement questions. I don't talk politics. I don't talk parenting. I talk about the things that I've done really well at, which is real estate investing and reaching financial freedom. And then I do a couple of videos throughout the week, usually where I'm traveling, to show what's going on and the life that's possible. Because the idea is, in my friends and family, I know I'm like 3 people who've invested and reached financial freedom out of the hundreds that I've ever met. I'm trying to find the people in what I call YouTube University who are willing to do the work, that'll join the one rental at a time community, right? Join his school, SKOOL, one rental at a time thing. Come to the event in February, because I'm only going to reach financial freedom once, right? Imagine the emotional roller coaster of going from broke, not making a lot, all the debt, raising the kids, to being financially free and getting to travel and do whatever I want, anytime I want, and having basically the money to do whatever I feel like. That's an amazing feeling, but I'm not going to just give it all away so I could feel that again. But every time I meet somebody, whether they've got 10 rentals or they've just found out about real estate, and I get to share in their wins when they share, this is the property I'm buying, or let's look at this deal together, I get to experience all of that again. So I appreciate it when people reach out, because I'm experiencing them on their path to financial freedom.
That's amazing. Well, we'll definitely get some links from you and put them in the show notes so people can click right to the different things that you're promoting, your book. You got the One Rental at a Time event in Las Vegas. That's coming up when is that?
That's February, I believe, 14th and 15th. It's the weekend of Valentine's Day.
Okay.
Michael Zuber puts it on at the Center for the Blind, and a lot of the proceeds go to the Center for the Blind. But it's a couple of days. There's no selling. There's no PowerPoint. It's just people who've reached financial freedom that come on stage, answer questions, share their journey, and maybe teach people how to make their systems better to make this. Because the idea is a smart person learns from their mistakes. A genius learns from other people's mistakes. And we're all up there sharing the mistakes we made. Here's what didn't work out. Skip that. Go to the stuff that did work.
Right. Amazing. Well, Dion, thank you again. I really appreciate you taking the time. You're way out there in Thailand, enjoying the, I don't know if the beach, the surf, doing some scuba, I hope. But thank you again for being here. I really appreciate it.
Nope, I appreciate it. I hope everybody has a day full of amazing.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you for listening to this edition of the REI Hacker Podcast. Please listen to future episodes of great guests like Dion, where we talk about real estate investing, business, and entrepreneurship. And we'll see you guys next time. Take care.
That's a wrap on today's Real Estate Revelations. Thank you for tuning into the REI Hacker Podcast. Remember, every property has a story, and every deal is a lesson. Until next time, keep hacking the real estate world.